Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to call the Finance Audit and Budget Committee for Monday, August 24th, 2022 to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is adoption of the agenda.
Romano adopts the agenda.
Support Van Sickle.
Made by Romano, supported by Van Sickle. Any questions? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Next item is approval of minutes dated October 20th, 2022. Need a motion to approve? Made by Haw, supported by Zinner. Any corrections, Commissioners? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Next item is public participation. This is the first opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on an item which is on today's agenda. There also will be a second opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak on any issue. Anyone from the public like to speak? Agenda items only. Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Next is our budget reviews. First today is the sheriff, which is budget pages C57, 58, 59, 60. And also special revenue funds D18, 19, 48, and 49. I need a motion to receive and file.
So move, Haw. Support Romano.
Moved by Haw, supported by Romano. Sheriff, good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here in front of you on this budget review day. Just by way of request for the 2023 budget this year, we asked for the return of 10 deputies, 5 corrections deputies, and a clerical position that I've been holding vacant for the last 2 years due to the pandemic. I think I've saved the county over $1 million in each budget cycle by keeping those positions vacant. Our jail numbers are starting, are starting to rise. We have deputy sheriffs, that police officers, certified individuals that are in the police academy that are applying. So we were looking at getting our numbers back. New positions that I asked for was actually a return of a captain that was eliminated in 2010. We negotiated and asked for a lieutenant to oversee our special events, 2 sergeants to assist with special events and a human trafficking task force, a dispatch supervisor to do the training, a media specialist, and a administrative coordinator. We also asked in our budget for some maintenance agreement increases and some renewals, some additional law enforcement supplies as it relates to our tasers, trauma kits, and pads that we use for the AED defibrillators. We asked for an increase in our advertising budget, trustee stipend to pay our trustees to do the work with inside the county jail, increase in police academy funds as we project to be sending at least 20 to the police academy next year, and $27,000 increase in flash drives, basically just due to the numerous FOIA requests that we have to process and send out. Looking at the budget and what we received, as it relates to the operating, the maintenance agreements, and the supplies, we received all of what we requested, so we're very happy with that. As it relates to the personnel, I did have a meeting with the Executive's Office and Finance and we kind of negotiated that those 10 deputy positions, I would ask that those would be eliminated and whatever the dollar value would be for those deputy sheriffs that be turned into corrections officers to work inside the jail. So when you look at the numbers, we received 21 corrections deputies in this budget, which was the 5 that I held vacant and 16 that we turned in that were deputy sheriff's positions. And the reason I asked for that is because of COVID, we are doing a lot more video court, a ton. So our transportation on the deputy side has decreased, but the increase inside the facility, we're moving prisoners to daily, hourly to get them in front of the different judges. So the increase in corrections personnel will help within the facility. And I received the media specialist. So with that being said, I am happy with that, but I just can work with that. But I just want the board to know that we received these positions, and it makes it look like, I got the biggest increase in personnel, which we didn't. And that increase in personnel, if you'll look, I took a $1.9 million reduction in my overtime cost. Steve thinks we're going to be able to reduce that, but we'll see how that goes next year. But when it comes out, I'm still behind the 8 ball on the budget, but I am willing to continue to work. I think what I have received, we can work with. So thank you for that. I will take any questions.
Thank you, Sheriff. First speaker, Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Tony. Nice seeing you again.
Yes.
With the proposed new intake center at the jail, does that impact the decision to go to COs instead of sheriffs?
Well, I think this is definitely going to help us. Again, once we bring that project in front of you, hopefully in 2023, and we get that ball rolling and we take a look at the facility, and we'll have to take a look at the staffing analysis. I think this additional 16 corrections deputies are going to help us staff that. I'm not going to tell this board at this time, that's going to properly staff it, because we will look at each of the posts in there and make sure we have the proper relief factor and properly staff that new facility.
With the positions being open, looking into your crystal ball, assuming they all got approved, how long do you think it would take to hire that many COs?
COs, I would hope within 6 months, 8 months. If they apply, we're going through the process. We're tasking our investigators to do the background. I think we have a really a robust timeline from once that application gets in. We do find the psychological examination and medical examinations, which is scheduled by civil service. I have no control over that. Kind of slows us down a little bit. That's a 2 to 3 week process. But from the time they put that application in, we'll bring them in and do an initial interview, just kind of, make sure they understand what they're applying for. And we have a panel that'll talk to them. And if we believe that, they can move on to that next step, we're pushing them through the background and then having them come back for our oral interview process.
And if you recall, we had a minor conversation about this. Have you spoken to HR about the pay scales and the benefits and
Let's see, I've spoken, and my undersheriff has spoken, and all the captains, everybody. I mean, we're getting, just last week, I think Oakland County's got flyers out there with what they're paying and what the signing bonuses are, and, that's going around our facility. So we're hounding every day.
Well, just so my colleagues recognize, you're becoming the trading ground for local municipalities and other counties because of what they're offering their law enforcement.
Exactly, and I get thanked all the time because we're sending them some great men and women that go work in other communities. So
Right.
At least I'm doing that right, they say.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have, Chair.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's unacceptable that the pay scale isn't higher, that we need our deputies. We need them here in Macomb County. I look through every line. I see that there's pay increases, but I thought it'd be higher. I think it should be higher. The idea that the sheriff says he can work with this is completely unacceptable. He should not have to work with this. It's enough what our deputies and sheriff have to go through. There's money here in the county, and we need our deputies. We need them badly. And we need to be paying for them. We need to have them. And I hope that somebody gets this. And I have a question for you, Sheriff. When these people go to the police academy, is there any commitment? Do you have any commitment from them to stay for 6 months, a year? Do you have a commitment from them?
There's no commitment.
Is there a way to get a commitment?
I talked about this last year. I even talked to Commissioner Farrington's wife and many legislatures. There's a bill in Lansing that has just been sitting there for well over a year, and we've tried in all associations. City of Detroit is probably one of the biggest supporters of this bill that says if we sponsor you, then you have to stay for a minimum of 3 years. If you leave within the first year, you have to pay a certain percentage back of your training and the cost of the academy. The second year, it reduced, and the third year, it's reduced. And after 3 years, you can leave and not have to pay back the municipality. If you got some ears in Lansing, I know I've tried, but it's still sitting there.
Well, I really appreciate you and the deputies.
Thank you.
You know that. And
Yep.
I wish that we can get, I think we need to get more money for them. That's all I have to say about it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Sheriff. How are
Hello
you?
there. Good.
You mentioned the 20 that are going to be sent to the police academy.
Yes.
Where would that expenditure be? Is that under conferences and training?
It should be a line where Police Academy.
Maybe Steve can help find what page it's on.
You got it handy, or you want to go through all my stuff?
No, it's part of the conferences and training line item. She's looking at the budget
So
page
that's
itself.
D8. So D18. Is that correct? C57. Okay, thank you. Let me just get to that page. Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. So my question for you, Sheriff, as you probably know, I believe a week ago, the governor announced a $30 million grant through the Commission, Public Safety, Law Enforcement. And I was just wondering if any of that grant funding could go towards the training. And I know it's very new, and the proposed budget was already put together, but are there any plans to get some of those dollars?
The answer is yes. There is, once we pick the individuals that are going to go to the police academy, we have to have their names. There's an application process that we'll fill out. We send it over to the police academy, and it's submitted to MCOLS. I think MCOLS is managing that grant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's $35,000, I believe, or no, up to 25 positions, and it's a first come, first serve. But yes, we will be applying for everybody next year that goes to it.
Okay, so we can kind of anticipate or assume that the conference line item could go down with the potential receiving the grants and applying for it.
Yes, we would certainly hope. If you look around the state, again, it's got to be a sponsored cadet that the municipality is going to send. It's a first come, first serve, and I think, again, 25 positions per agency, so.
Do you have any concerns about not being able to receive some of those grant dollars? I kind of sense some hesitation.
Well, no, I The answer to your question is yes. I would hope that we'd be able to recoup some of those costs and put it back into conferences and training. And then in future budgets, I could reduce the police academy fund. Again, this is new, first come, first serve, so there's no guarantee.
Sure.
So
I mean,
no
I was
guarantee,
very excited to hear about
Yeah.
that investment to support law enforcement, and I just want to make sure that Macomb County receives some of those, taxpayer dollars, and that we can put it back into our county.
Everybody, we are applying for everybody that goes.
All right, thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Sheriff.
Good afternoon.
About having new employees who are trained sign up for a certain length of time, I understood what you said, that there's no law that says they have to. Is there a law that says that you can't request that of a new employee? Is it because it's public
There's been
service
case law
commissioner?
and court opinions on that. Basically, you're forcing somebody to stay to work. We have come up with a few things over our tenure, over the last 5 years, where we tried to get them to sign some agreements and possibly pay back some money. And through challenges and through legal, Corporation Counsel says it's a loser, and I'm not going to force somebody.
Because I know that kind of an agreement is very, very common in the private sector.
Yep. Now we're in public, and it's not allowed.
Okay. And 27,000 for thumb drives for FOIA requests. How many FOIA requests do we get in a year?
Anybody? About 500 from dispatch. Every police report, every FOIA that comes in is requesting body camera, in-car cameras. Everything is videoed. So I'd have to check the numbers.
Because with the price of technology, I mean, 27,000 isn't much in the overall budget of $90 million plus, but it just seems like a whole lot of thumb drives.
It certainly is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But yeah, if you could detail the FOIA request counts, I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Wallace?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I know that it's been difficult to get cadets before. Now you have 20 that are coming into the academy. How did you find them? Was it like?
Well, we're still, two things. We're still hiring from outside right into the agency and putting them on the road. So we are getting individuals that are leaving, I'll just say Detroit, some of the suburban departments that are coming to work for us. The 20 that we're predicting or forecasting to send in 2023 are individuals that are currently working in the jail or in our dispatch center under the old system. So because of the shortage, we went different ways. Before, you used to have college, 2 years of college. Then we went to a high school diploma to be promoted. Then I moved it back to a 2 years of college, only because I had people that left and just with high school, and because we're so short, hoping something ever happens in Lansing, but I have to open it back up, so we reverted back to high school diploma. A lot of the people that we have, a lot of the newer COs, corrections officers that are working in the institution have bachelor's degrees and associate's degrees. And, as long as they pass their MCOLS examinations, get themselves on the list, they're going to be going to the academy. So that's what we're predicting, just from talking to our staff inside the facility.
Okay, that's good to know. And then I know I didn't get to meet with you and Commissioner Matuzak like I had hoped, but just wondering, are you working with any high schools to see if there's any interest there, so at least they can get the idea going in their head?
Yeah, so we're in the high schools. We put out we do our senior citizen academy, We do two, one in the fall, one in the spring. We also run a high school academy, and we did put this out for, this fall, and we went countywide, every district, and we only had about 7 students sign up. And we had to cancel it because it just wasn't enough to bring all my staff in for 7 kids.
How many students would you need for it to move forward?
We'd like 20,
20, okay.
at least 20.
That's
Yep.
good to know. I'm on a mission.
Yeah, no, and, our staff was contacting the school principals and administrators and, opening it up, and so. But we
Right.
are doing everything we can, whether it's job fairs, career days at different school districts. We're in
Yeah.
there with our school resource officers. Those guys and gals should be our biggest cheerleaders when they're inside those schools and engaging with the kids, and especially those that want to go into law enforcement.
Right. I would love for, I know, you guys are taxed so much already. If you could even reach out to us as we work with our local schools if you have flyers or any information that we can pass along while we're inside the schools meeting with the administration, I would love to just pass that along. Because I know I was speaking with a couple of administration about co-op for the clerk, that they were saying that kids would love to, even work in the clerk's department at no charge. They would get school credit hours, So I think just seeing that part of the world when they don't have access to it would be awesome, and I would love to help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Sheriff.
Hello, Joe.
Sheriff, when we met a couple of weeks ago, you had mentioned the fact that, in fact, I'm looking, I see you need more jail correctional officers, but at that time you said the prisoner count went down, but those that remained, there was a problem. Maybe you can expound on that a little bit. You're looking for more, but there's less prisoners.
Right,
Please.
so, from a historical perspective, early 2000, we had 1,500 inmates. Late 2000s into, 2012 through 18, we ran about a 1,200 bed facility. Pre-COVID, we were down to about 900 inmates. And I think I've mentioned to this board, when COVID hit, we went down to 250 inmates. The judges released a lot of individuals on lower bonds, tethers, personal bonds. Our count today was 786, so we're getting back up to that 800 mark. But what we have is we have more work inside the facility. We are doing 30-minute rounds in all housing areas, 15-minute rounds on those on suicide watch and those high observation cells. We have a more violent type of prisoner that's incarcerated. We've seen our assaults on staff increase by at least 4 or 5%. And these are just out of the blue, run on up and punch the guy in the back or gal in the back of the head. So the individuals that are in jail need to be in jail to keep our society safe. So yeah, the numbers are low, but the type of individuals that we have to supervise and the amount of work that's going on inside the facility and to keep it secure and keep everybody safe, the increase is definitely needed.
Thank you, Sheriff. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, thanks for being here
Yes,
today. A
anytime.
couple quick questions
Sure.
for you. In your opening comments, you mentioned advertising, money for advertising.
Yes.
Is that for recruitment purposes?
Yes.
Is that something that you plan on hitching the wagon to the More Than a Job program, or is this something that your department is doing specifically for the sheriff's department?
We've gone to social media, multimedia, we're running it on the different social media platforms, targeting that certain demographic and group that, when they go into whatever it is, TikTok, Twitter, here comes our deputies' smiling faces and, hey, what about a career? We're doing everything we can, whether it's billboards, signs, the posters you've seen, material going out to the different events.
But this is specific, this is your department putting it out for your department?
Yes, sir.
basically. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then my second question is the school liaisons. Are there any other school districts recently that have reached out that are looking for help?
Negotiations, they reached, New Haven has reached out.
Okay.
And then there is a Merit Academy, which is also
In New Haven.
In New Haven.
Sure.
They have both reached out to us.
Okay,
So we're talking and trying to get that worked out.
great. Thank you, Sheriff. Oh, we're not, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farrington. Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Sheriff.
Hello.
I had a great discussion with the sheriff where I talked about talking about our program more as an apprenticeship program, that you start at the jail, you spend some time there, we'll send you to school, you become a deputy. That if we think about this as a path as opposed to just coming to be a corrections officer, we may have more luck getting people to think about this. My specific questions are on the Special Revenue Fund detail, sheriff grants. So I don't know who's going to be answering these questions. On my
Ask the
on my
question and
pager, it's
I can always grab
D19.
somebody to come up.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the numbers for 2021, 2022, 2023, there is a whole lot of volatility here. They go way up, they go down, there's nothing. I'm just sort of wondering about these and what this means.
I think in some of these grants, was it the FOC guys too? No.
It's just they're really sort of all over the place.
The fund balance, or which one are you looking at?
Well, look
What
at,
page?
The forfeitures.
yeah, forfeitures, the set federal, set state.
Oh, that's about what we receive in forfeiture. We have our state forfeiture comes from our own team, our sheriff's enforcement team, when they do forfeitures. We seize that and put it into the state forfeiture account. The federal forfeiture account is our task force officers that are working either for the DEA, U.S. Marshals, or the FBI violent crime. If there's any type of forfeiture that comes from the federal government, it has to go into there. Each one of those has a list of what it could be spent on. So that goes up and down only because of how much money is taken in or seized. Sometimes the federal forfeiture could be 2 or 3 years before we get paid on, especially on some of the larger ones where we might be receiving $150,000, $100,000 to get through the court process and get dispersed. It could take time.
So the numbers 2023 and going forward, I mean, how do we come up with those? Because they're very different than the other numbers.
You'd have to ask finance.
Sorry, Steve.
You got 50,000 recommended and
Yeah.
587,000 in the account.
Yeah.
So what's happening there, if you look at 2022, those bigger numbers for the federal and the state, that's budgeting the entire fund balance in those funds. So what's happening, if you look in prior years and going forward, we're budgeting more of a anticipated expense, not just not just putting the entire fund balance in the budget,
Okay.
if that helps.
Well, it does help a little bit. And then some of these, there's nothing going forward.
Some of them are either spend downs of existing fund balances. You can see, for example, training for locals programs to close. It's just it's an estimate, our best guess. If they spend it, they have some money to spend. They may not spend any at all. But you'll see the big dollars are in those forfeiture accounts.
Right, absolutely. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Afternoon, Sheriff.
Good afternoon.
So, I've been a broken record on this question. You have the answer for it, I'm sure, but
Now you put me on
my
the spot.
first question today for you is related to your 2021 numbers. So you had $850,000 that was not spent in your budget in that year. Specifically, do you know what the majority of those funds were?
I would only take a guess that it would have been personnel costs
Okay. That's what I figured that answer was
Yeah.
going to be.
because of the vacants.
Next question In regards to the jail, so your overall budget, it looks like the jail with this budget cycle, it's about probably 50% of your total operations. When I look at your expenditures by service on C60 for the jail specifically, so in 2020 it was a little over 41 million, and this year it's a little over 46 million. So about a $5 million swing there. I know we're talking about a new central intake. I know you're asking for correction officers, and I assume that's in preparation for that intake. My question is specific in regards to the total cost for the jail. I mean, we're going up $5 million over the course of 3 years. And with the central intake, I thought that was going to possibly save us some money with changing processes, and you don't have to transport as many prisoners with Zoom and technology and everything that's happening. So what's kind of your forecast going forward with costs related to the jail?
Our jail costs are always what I would say unpredictable. I know Lynn was just here a few weeks ago on $5 million to fix the tower. If things break down inside the facility, when our dishwashing tank breaks down and we have to go to styrofoam and paper, our costs go up, uniform costs, bedding costs, mattresses. So what we're hoping that with a newer facility that we could stabilize our cost and be able to predict what our costs are going to be out in the future with a new facility. With the exception, you got to remember that tower is still going to be open. We're still going to need that just because of our numbers. And there's always going to be a cost until that thing comes down.
So with the central intake, you're asking for 12 officers. When that's built, let's just assume it's built and we're moving forward and everything's operational there. Are you anticipating that you're going to need more officers for it?
Okay, it's 21 or Shelton from the gallery, the new officers. Anticipating, I don't know. Again, without seeing what the facility is going to be, laid out, the number of posts that are going to be inside to staff it. Now you have to remember, in the new facility is going to call for demolition in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 1999, all which are staffed currently by individuals that are working if it's not, certain sections are closed. So until I get an idea of what that facility looks like and how many posts we have to staff, could 21 be enough plus everything that we're taking off? That's a possibility, but I don't want to commit to that and get beat up and, well.
Well, I think it's a good conversation
Yeah.
that we all should have too, just as we're designing and building and doing whatever we want to do with this facility, that you also are dropping in what these employee counts are going to be, because we could say it's a $20 million project, and next thing we know, we have to have the officers there, and that price just skyrockets.
That was one of the bigger discussions in 2020 when we were coming in front of this board for the new facility, was the adequate staffing and how many more officers we would need to adequately staff it. So we don't want any surprises.
Okay. Second round, Commissioner Hall.
Thanks, Chair. Tony, where would I find new vehicle purchases in here? Is that under supplies and services?
Little help? Come on, Steve, get up here.
Because frankly, it doesn't look like there's enough. Right.
It's not.
Okay.
Commissioner, we budget all the vehicle purchases countywide in the non-departmental capital outlay. We've done that for years.
Okay.
There's $1.4 million in that whole line item for countywide vehicle purchases.
Because the reason I'm asking, it seems like every 6 months, Captain Briney sacrificed to come in here and re-ask to get more vehicles.
Yeah, and then you'll notice on all those requests that the funding source is identified as the non-departmental capital outlay.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to feel pretty confident we're not going to see him back after this budget's approved?
Oh, you'll
You're going
see
to see him
him.
only because every vehicle is over $35,000.
Right. So they,
For approval, I'm talking
yeah,
about
for
budgeted
approval.
amount. It's gonna be in the budget?
there's money, there's $1.4 million in there. The majority of it's for sheriff department. So they
Okay,
come once.
that's what I wanted to
Yeah,
hear.
exactly.
Okay. Second question.
He'll find
we-
the money if he doesn't.
We had, he covered you real good on that.
He better
Tony, by the way. We had Tom Clouden here talking about enhancing child services, about the process for deadbeat spouses and thing. And one of the statements that Tom made was, or the prosecutor was, your local police department, once a bench warrant's been issued, willing to go out and get these guys, and which I thought was kind of odd, but nevertheless, what I'm going to attempt to do after the budget is put a committee together looking at all 28 phases of this process and how we can improve and enhance it, and I'd greatly appreciate participation from your team.
Yep, we participate with the FOC. We're kind of on I would say, a temporary hold right now, just because of staffing. And I did have a discussion with Tom Blum on that, so once we get the staffing back up, we can put those deputies back out there. But, as long as there's a valid order, it's in lien, any police officer in the state of Michigan can arrest, and we'll go pick them up.
Yeah, the way it was described is we wait until they get pulled over or commit another crime or something like that, and then it's easy to apprehend them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one methodology. There's got to be something a little bit better or a lot better than that.
And I don't know if Tom touched on it, and we've had many conversations, a lot of times just from the deputy in the office or a detective making a phone call and letting the individual know. He claims they'll show up and make a payment, so.
Well,
A lot of times.
I would appreciate, and lastly, I want to compliment you guys on your annual report manual here. It's the best one I've ever seen since I've been here, and if you want to talk about advertising, walk around and put one of these in every municipal library. I think they'd get good reading. So thank you.
Take a bow, staff.
Yeah, take a bow. That's all I have, Chair.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. Sheriff, do you have an expectation of how many deputies will be retiring this next year? You may not know now, I don't know. Just thought I'd ask.
Offhand, I'm thinking 4 maximum.
Won't let them go, eh? Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Related to what Commissioner Hall was talking about the discussion about picking up the deadbeats who aren't paying child support, and you said staffing's an issue, and we were told by the prosecutor, and I assume that's probably pretty close to the truth, that other counties have, they have dedicated sheriff's deputies out there just going around and picking them up in other counties. In Wayne County, I think he used. And we don't have that because you're short-staffed. Well, what if we gave you 2 deputies to do that? I mean, that wouldn't be the only thing they would do, obviously, but
Right,
because you sacrificed patrolmen, road patrolmen, for COs because you thought that was the only option you had. What if we gave you a couple more deputies?
Yeah, and I'll be upfront and honest, we had 4 deputies doing this.
Okay.
They were paid 50% by the state and 50% through the county on a grant.
Is that grant still available?
I think they still have the grant. I'm not sure. You'd have to talk to them. But when we were looking at, handling our contracted areas, our responses, the different courts, I looked at it from where could we pull. I mean, we've pulled people from, and I had conversations with Tom Blum, and he was okay with pulling back on those deputies. So right now, we don't have those deputies that all they did was drive around and go look for individuals that had warrants on FOC. What we have done is we do have that list. We still have a deputy that's assigned in the FOC office. They could provide us with a list, and in our areas, we can go check and knock on doors and look for those individuals. I got a drug team. I got a fugitive team. If they're in the south end of the county or the north end of the county, we can go out and look for those individuals. Until I can get the staff back up.
Well, you're talking to the right people to get the staff back up. We're the ones that got the money to provide
Well,
those.
it's the physical body. Give me the heartbeat.
Oh.
Once I have the heartbeat, once I have the deputy, I can put those people back.
Oh.
Right now, it's just, I don't have the personnel.
But you don't have the budget to go out and recruit more deputies because you don't have the money to do that, right? Which comes first?
Well, I mean, if you guys said you're gonna give me 10 more deputies, I would say thank you.
Well, I wouldn't say
But
10, but I would
I'm
say.
just saying, we're short. We're trying to recruit, we're trying to get the people into the police academies. If I had, with this new number, if you guys approve this budget, we're gonna be 27 deputies short. I have 6 in the police academy right now. I have, I think, 2 or 3 offers out for police officers that are gonna come on over. And if we send 20 deputies next year, you know, at both 2 police academies, one in January and one in August, we're gonna be getting those numbers back up. And once those numbers are back up, then we're gonna be able to, you know, put people back in those FOC units, put people back in my narcotics units. So I would say,
How many budgeted vacant positions do you have for deputies right now that you can't fill?
37,
That are already budgeted?
yes.
So, all right, so you don't
So-
need any more, you don't need any more budgeted positions.
And
you do need more bodies.
As Commissioner Kraft said, I've got 2 schools that are knocking at my door. I've got a North End community that wants more deputies up in their patrol areas, so.
But again, you just can't, you're short the body. You just can't recruit them fast enough. Not, you don't have the money for it.
No, it's,
You have
right
the-
now, it's just
Okay, all right.
recruiting, getting them in the door, getting them trained.
All right, commissioners, hold your amendments for more deputies. They don't need anything. He can't fill what he's
Oh,
got
see,
now.
he knew. See, everybody's gonna give me more deputies.
Well, this board wants to support the law enforcement.
you guys
And
are-
they want to help you with every we
Yeah.
can, right?
Yes.
And, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Well, Chair Brown finally got around to where I was going to go with that, he started with, I'm going to give you positions, and ended up with, you don't need positions, so yeah. So it doesn't matter what we actually put into the budget, because it really comes down to our ability to compensate, and that's not something that we should be in the business of doing up here. Correct? That's done through negotiations and such.
Well, that is what we're hearing on the way out, where they're going. Compensation and benefit package.
And you're not the only department we have that problem in. Most definitely, it is a big problem within your department, but us trying to throw money at it for positions isn't going to solve the problem, was my point. But Chair Brown did finally get to the same position. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Matuzak.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I can't help it. I really like the format of your new report. It's really useful, and it breaks things out by services. I think that that's really good. However, if I were a person of color and I looked at that report, I don't see myself reflected on those pages. Thank you,
Well,
Mr. Chair.
Tony, just to kind of follow up what Commissioner Brown said, what about grants in your office? Do you have someone specific that does all your grant writing, and are there any available grants out there that can help your department that you're not tapping into because you don't have the resources to do it?
No, each of my captains all have the ability to write grants. You know, I wrote grants when I was back there, so each one, you know, we look at what's out there to get grants.
Okay.
Right now, our main focus is getting people in the door, getting those vacant positions filled, getting them through whatever training process, whether it's in the jail, whether it's on the road or the dispatch center, and then getting them off that they can fill an actual working spot by themselves so we can continue to what we're providing service.
Okay. So it sounds like to me that you need these additional positions, but you're still having challenges filling the ones that are vacant in your department.
On the deputy side.
On the deputy side.
Corrections is basically, we hire you with, you know, a high school diploma. and we provide you the correction officer training for a couple weeks. We send you to a 4-week corrections academy, and then you're hitting the door running.
So the 37 vacant positions that you currently have that are deputy related, you're switching what your request is in regards to those deputies and converting them to correction officers.
Correct.
Okay, which would be what, 15
I think it
theoretically
equated
to the 12? Is that kind of the ratio there?
Well, the 5 I'm getting back that we held open, and I'm getting, I think it's
20 total.
20 total.
20
So
total.
it'd be 15 each.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's how you're kind of revising your budget to hopefully fill those positions that you think that you can fill
Yes.
sooner rather than later.
Right. Because eventually, those individuals that are going to work in the jail, hopefully, will want to go to the police academy to be
Mm-hmm. I
promoted.
mean, my concern is like when I look at a budget that's got over $800,000 in surplus, and we have other departments that have needs too. We're trying to give everyone what they need, and we also want to give you what you need. But we're also looking at a surplus here. It's a pretty big number. So, if we need to fill these positions, we need to fill these positions. But I understand the challenges that you're having. So, okay. Seeing no other speakers for the sheriff budgets, please vote. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay. Next department is the E911 Sheriff Dispatch. This is Special Revenue Fund D21 and D22. Need a motion to receive and file this one. Moved by Haw, supported by Wallace. Sheriff?
Yep. So in this budget item here, through the 911, the surcharge that this board passed, we asked for an additional dispatch supervisor to handle strictly the training aspect of the dispatch center, and 2 IT staff that would be paid out of this budget, but would be hired and be employees of the IT department.
Okay, Commissioners, I think the agenda should be D20, 21, and I think it says here 21 and 22, so it's D20 and D21. Any questions related to these budgets? Seeing none. Oh, Commissioner Sung.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the surcharge and the new positions that are going to be covered that you just mentioned, what will happen if after the funding is depleted or the surcharge is not renewed?
We would look at our operational aspects, see if we could, find funding, ask for funding, or.
So these are not contract positions, they would be like salary, full-time,
Full-time.
correct?
Correct.
I'm sorry.
Yes, they
Go
would
ahead.
be full-time sheriffs. Well, the supervisor would be a sheriff's employee, the 2 IT people would be employees of the IT department. So if in 2 years the 911 doesn't go through, we would take a look at our budget and see where we're at and see if there's any, if we see that need, we'll make some decisions and we'll look for some financing,
Okay,
at least for the supervisor. The IT department will address that, but I'll find it.
okay. Thank you, Chair.
Sheriff, in regard, and maybe this is a Steve question, with the transfers in, specifically with this fund, I was under the impression that the revenue that was being brought on through the surcharge, there would no longer be a need for general fund dollars in this fund specifically. And based on this, we're still transferring in about $2.5 million.
So the idea there, Commissioner, is that's the cost of the non-contract dispatchers prior to the surcharge. And our thinking is that the surcharge will eventually be needed for equipment upgrades and things of that nature.
What do you mean the non-surcharge? So specifically,
So we have
Those
60
actual-
60 dispatchers, roughly,
We're budgeted for 59.
59, and I think we contract for 40-ish.
okay,
So when that whole shift was made, then there's contract revenue that comes with the 40. General fund contribution comes with the 19, basically. And that
Okay.
stays. The surcharge is paying for any increases in salaries and benefits, and equipment purchases is what we're really trying to set that money aside for in the future, system upgrades, consoles, and that sort of thing.
so that's a totally separate budget, or are you, those actual expenditures for those capital expenditures, whatever those items are, that's not built into another budget somewhere else?
No,
That's
that'll
funneling
come
through
out of
here?
here.
That's specific to this budget?
Those purchases would come out if it's specific to dispatch.
Okay, and they're only related to dispatch? They're not being used
Right.
for anything else?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Zinner?
Chair, can you clarify, your question was this set up at the time that the vote went through? Was that your question?
My question was in regards to the $2.5 million that we see going forward here every year, that we're transferring in general fund dollars into this
Yes.
budget. And I was asking in regards to the surcharge, if that was going to fully fund this fund. And it doesn't appear that it is, because these are different expenses, per what Steve just stated.
Do you think that it was meant to be then? Do you think that had been planned out that way?
That's why I
before?
asked the question, Commissioner.
What do you think now?
I think we just heard the answer, so what finance said is what finance said.
I
So,
think, I have 19 county-funded dispatchers that we have had that do county-funded, whether it's the sheriff's deputies, the courts, that came along and have always been sheriff's dispatchers. So you have sheriff's dispatchers that are funded by the county budget, and then we have the contracted with Sterling, Clinton, and all the fire departments. Now they're all put together. So those 19, I think, if Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, are being funded by county dollars, put into the 911 account here.
Thank you, Sheriff.
So Sheriff, just as kind of a follow-up here to what Commissioner Zinner just asked. So in regards to those other municipalities that don't contract with us for dispatch, obviously there's an opportunity for them to save money by using our services, but they choose not to. Is there been any discussions with them that possibly they would be willing to now move over to our dispatch at all?
When they ask, we respond. So we did respond to the Sarisa group. The other departments that still have their own PSAPs, until they knock on my door, I don't go out looking for work. So.
Okay. Seeing no other questions for this budget, please vote. Thank you, Sheriff.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, next budget is Community Corrections. This is Special Revenue Fund D1, 2, 27, and 28. Need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Wallace, supported by Farrington. Barb?
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Just a real high-level sort of overview of the changes that took place in our budget. We did receive a small increase, about $60,000 from our Michigan Department of Corrections Office of Community Corrections grant for this year, coming to $1.6 million, a little over that. That was mostly to address what we had anticipated as staff cost increases. You'll see a change in the request of the number of assessor therapy coordinator staff that we have. That is a budget neutral request. We are actually taking funds that were associated with contract services and moving that to cover those staff. to get everyone on board as county employees. There's been some changing in the requirements that MDOC has for us of licensing for those staff. So we're able to have them all together and no longer use a contractor for that service. And then an increase was requested to provide for some services that are mostly related to the increase that we saw when we put all of our services out for bid. It had been, 3 years since our services went out. We saw 29% increase in the cost for our drug testing that we provide, and about a 25% increase in the outpatient group programming that we saw, and those were of the lesser cost bids. So across the board, we're really seeing an increase in all of those services that we had not anticipated, as well as some additional payroll cost that we're going to be looking at when January 1 takes place that we were not aware of when we submitted our request to MDOC for funding in May. So those are the changes that we are looking at for this year. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report. Did I just hear you say you went out to bid and drug testing and your tether program costs went up?
We went out to bid for services, and those vendors that did bid, the ones that we chose, which were the lower bidders, the costs that they came back with were about anywhere, depending on the service, from 20 to 29% higher than what they had been in the past.
Than the year prior?
Than the 3 years prior. That was a 3-year contract that we were on.
So that is the $25,000 increase in the tether program? Is that what I'm hearing?
Some of that is attributed to the tether. That's specifically for electronic monitoring. The drug testing would be in contractual services. I'll find where that's located, sorry. So that would be, oh, sorry, I apologize, I misspoke on that. That's in substance abuse treatment. That was $182,000 on D28.
Okay, wait a second. D28?
Yes.
Okay. That is a substance abuse treatment program?
Yes, that's for individuals who are in group treatment and drug testing programming.
So that went from 182 to 314, is that what I'm reading?
That's part of that, is drug testing and group treatment services. What we had was about overall cost in drug testing increase for 200 participants that we have testing twice weekly was about $100,000 when you look at the overall. We had about a $28,000 increase in the cost of groups, and then an additional $58,000 for staff costs.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, on those contracts that you bid out, I don't recall, when did you go out for bid for those? I don't recall those coming to us for approval.
Those are approved through the Community Corrections Advisory Board.
Oh, really? Vicki?
Yeah, Vicki, do it.
And here she comes.
Hello, good afternoon. The Community Corrections Advisory Board is one of a handful of boards that the board in the ordinance that you pass every year, just like the MCA Board, Community Mental Health. I think there might be another one that the board allows, because they have their own board, that those contracts go through that board and they do not fall under the board's procedures. They go through the RFP process with the county. Everything goes through purchasing. Contracts come through our office, once they're approved through the CCAB board. And you do have a member of the board that sits on that. Commissioner Nard is the board member that's on the CCAB board.
Do you, so you oversee those, the exec's office reviews those and make sure that they're, because I mean, they're largely unelected people on those boards, and,
Correct, yeah. Barb still follows the contracting policy of the county, the purchasing policy. It still ends up coming through Smartsheet, which we use for contracts that don't have to go to the board.
Thanks for reminding me,
And
thank you.
yeah, that's in the ordinance.
I had forgotten, appreciate it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your service, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Barb, so looking at your budget here on D27, so Your revenues are, and I'm looking at 2020 numbers to what your recommended here is for 2023. So your revenue goes up $400,000. Your expenses go up about, what, 600, a little over 600,000, 700,000. But we're also transferring in more general fund dollars into your budget from 2020 to 2023. That's doubled.
Yes.
Why is that?
For the most part, that has to do with pretrial programming. So those individuals, as the sheriff talked about that sort of increase and decrease that we're seeing in the jail population, a good number of those people that are not there right now are in the community being supervised by us. So we provide that pretrial assessment within typically about 24 hours after somebody's been arrested. So we can make recommendations as it pertains to bond to the courts in our county that we deal with. After that, if the judges go along with that recommendation, then they are supervised on things like drug testing, electronic monitoring by staff in my office. And we've seen probably a 75% increase in the last year and a half. COVID was really what kind of kicked that off, but it was increasing before that. So when we saw that 900 population at the jail, we had started seeing an increase in pretrial programming well before that. So when we look at, we probably did, 600 assessments for pretrial 5 or 6 years ago. We did 2,400 this year. So we're increasing those individuals and having those that can be safely supervised in the community, not in the jail, and in the community with us.
Okay. And then last year to this year, your contract services decreased by over 50%. What did you have budgeted this year that you're not anticipating to do next year?
That's okay. That's the switch. That's what I thought. We had previously contracted out for staff to complete assessments and provide some case management services. What we're looking at doing is no longer contracting for that service. It's financially beneficial for us, and it kind of streamlines things to bring those in as actual county employees. So the budget will remain with us. We're just moving where that's being allocated towards.
Okay, so financially, it's more advantageous, you're saying, but your personnel item is going up by $500,000, and that's going down by $300,000. So if you're going to bring these employees in-house between benefits, it's got to be cost neutral. I would think contracting would be a little bit more inexpensive.
That's what we're looking at, is the contracting is more expensive, which is why we're asking to bring them on as county staff rather than contract for that and pay those additional administrative costs that we're paying.
But that's not what the budget says. So your personnel is going from 1.16 to 16.7, and your contract services is only going down by $300,000 because you have increased compensation, whatever the case may be. So it's actually costing you more money to do it that way.
When we're looking at the anticipated increases and things that we had, and we also brought one clinical manager position back on, I believe in summer. Yeah, it was in the summer. So there were some things that happened through the course of the year that are impacting that as well. And then, like I said, what we're looking at in January in terms of those increases across the board are going to increase that.
Okay. Is are your grants, are they going up?
Yes.
To meet inflation? I'm just curious.
They go up based on, the requests that we have, obviously, and what's available. So when we're looking at the Department of Corrections, we meet with our grant liaison before we start planning for that and kind of take a look at what the temperature is for, what we can ask for. Certainly we have to cover staff costs. Sometimes, you have to back off on service costs because of that. So it has gone up every year for the last 8 years since I've been here. We've taken reductions in the past. So right now we're continuing to increase.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if the proposed reorganization of how we do jail intake and moving people to more community-based treatment as opposed to putting them in jail cells, how is that going to impact your budget the next couple of years out?
We're going to be busy. We're going to have to look at what we're doing with when we we're looking at right now making some changes in how quickly we see people for assessment services to kind of streamline that, but we'll be definitely in need of additional staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Steve, what's the total cost for these two positions in this budget?
The total cost, well, the first thing I need to point out is that I believe on page D28, the count is actually 3 positions. So the cost of those 3 is about $234,000.
I see 2.
So the dollars are built in for 3. This page D28 needs to be updated to reflect another assessor. So it's in felony, is it felony or analysis?
Flip to the next page.
No.
2 of them come from.
Or is it in the calendar year grant?
2 of them are in the MDOC grant, 1 is in county general.
Okay, so the other one is going to be reflected. In her calendar year grant, which, no?
That's the felony year analysis program.
It's all 3?
Yep.
So the felony year analysis program goes from 2 to 3. And so.
So where's that third? I'm still lost, guys. Where's the third one?
It's a misprint. It's not in there right now. It should go from 2.
It's in the dollars, not in the head count.
Dollars are there, the head count's not correct.
So you're saying it's going to be 16.6?
Correct.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. For 3 positions, total 234.
234.
And that's everything, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Seeing no other questions for community corrections. Thank you, Barb.
Thank
Please vote,
you.
Commissioners.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next is emergency management. This is budget page C29 and C30, and also special revenue fund pages D7 and D8. I need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Haas, supported by Wallace. Hey, Brandon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have 2 items that I'd like to detail for you today. I'll start by saying that all of the other discretionary items where I have input remain the same from our FY 2022 budget, but there are 2 items where there are going to be increases or where we have requested increases, and I'd like to detail those for the Commission today. First is our mobile command vehicle. For those that have seen it, we have a mobile command vehicle that we deploy to actual incidents and special events, and that serves as kind of like the command center. If there's a special event, it gets deployed to about a dozen pre-planned events every year so that first responder agencies can use it as their command post at the event, things like that nature. So it's the kind of things you're probably thinking of. So in the real world, that would be like the Fraser Sinkhole. The pre-planned events would be things like the Armada Fair, the Peach Festival, things of that nature. The vehicle was manufactured in 2006. It's an RV-style vehicle. It has a pop-out, some mechanics on it. For a 16-year-old vehicle, it is actually in excellent shape, but it does need some maintenance and upgrades to extend the useful life of it. We've managed to leverage grant funding in order to upgrade some of the capabilities of the vehicle. However, some of the basic maintenance that we have to do to the vehicle is not eligible for reimbursement with the grant. So I'm talking about things like electrical upgrades and basic vehicular mechanical upgrades that aren't part of a response capability for an emergency event. So I'm asking for a one-time increase in our vehicle operations line item of $11,000 that would be used to fund some of these maintenance items that we've identified on the mobile command post. The vehicles new are running anywhere between $500,000 and $750,000, equipped similarly to how ours is. So other than its age, it's still well equipped, and we're intending to keep it on the road and useful for years to come by utilizing this funding. So that's the first item. The second item is moving a position from a grant that is about to expire to the general fund. The county's been a leader in school safety for about 20 years now, partnering with the intermediate school district and our 21 school districts to coordinate school safety programs and methodologies that cross district boundaries. The position in question was born out of those partnerships. In 2018, our department wrote for a grant along with the intermediate school district to receive enough funding for 2 years to hire school safety planners. These planners cover the big picture public safety items that individual departments are less equipped to handle. Emergency management's job is to do emergency planning, whereas public safety agencies' jobs are to do the public safety issues out in the field, the tactics, the operations, things like that. That's what this position does. We got 3.5 years out of a 2-year grant based on COVID and some other things. And my department applied for a renewal of the grant 3 times. And each time we were told that the funding is being directed to agencies who are looking to seed new programs in this area and not continuation of existing capabilities. So I understand that it's unusual to come and ask for a grant position to be moved to the general fund. However, in light of the current threat landscape and the current school safety environment, it is my opinion, and the OCE agrees, that this is a capability that we need to have remain in the county. And I feel that it was in the best interest of the county and our 150,000 school students that we put this before the commission in our budget this year. Just for some statistics on what these positions have done since we've started, we've conducted threat assessments of over 100 school buildings in the county and provided those reports to the school district for them to act on potential threats. We've assisted with the update of over 200 emergency operations plans. We've assisted them with training and exercises, and we're moving into threat assessment and further training and exercise based on those threat assessments and plans that we have developed. Those programs, if hired outside, tend to cost about $3,000 per. So based on that, we've received about $600,000 worth of value from a $300,000 grant by having these positions in-house. So I wanted to propose that we add this to our general fund and that we keep this capability here in Macomb County. I want to stress this is a capability decrease. If this position goes away when the grant ends, which is at the end of the year, this is a capability decrease for us. We would remain involved in school safety. We would spread some of those duties out amongst existing staff as much as we can, but our staff is taxed. Our staff is about at their limit. This position is definitely necessary to keep our school safety posture where it is now. Thank you.
Brandon, what's the total cost for that employee?
The position, with benefits, $115,800, I believe, is the correct number.
And how is this different from municipalities that contract with us that have decided to pay for that locally? So for example, Macomb Township is contracted with the Sheriff's Department to have an officer in all these schools. So why are they paying for a service if we're now looking to provide a service?
It's a different service. So what they're paying for is the school resource officers who are actually in the school. Their job is to go into the school, build relationships, make sure, observe, assist at the school level with the planning and the crime prevention and things of that nature. What we do is we take a standardized look countywide. And this is where we have an advantage over many other counties in the state, is we're one of the very few programs in the nation that has something like this. We're able to develop, as results of a partnership that we've had, standardized school safety practices over the past 20 years. So when we do emergency plans, say Lance Cruz and Centerline, they're using the same basic emergency plans. As you know, our school districts cross jurisdictional boundaries. Some school districts, some communities have 5 school districts that serve them. It doesn't do the community a service to have 5 school districts engaging in 5 different planning processes that lead to 5 different public safety plans that they then have to memorize and implement in the field. So our job is to provide that level of coordination at, say, the county level, the 50,000-foot level, that allows those school resource officers, police departments, and fire departments to do their job in the field.
Okay. I've got a couple other questions, but I'll open it up here. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. How many miles on that vehicle?
About 9,000, I believe.
9,000?
Yes. Not as many as you think. That's why I said it's still in excellent shape for a vehicle of its age.
You know, and I just want to attest to, I think it was Harold that brought it up originally when we do these grant positions. And again, public safety has always been number one, but just a statement, you know, when we do these grant positions and the grant expires, what happens? And we have to have these people hired because that position is absolutely, has to be taken care of. So just a simple statement of that, and I did want to know the mileage on the vehicle. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
The position you want to move into the general fund, the formerly grant-funded position, you've done a lot of planning. Has there been any implementation of those plans? I mean, has there been any, the ISD's out there working with all the school districts for coordination, for services, trying to develop efficiencies. I didn't know that you were doing that also. And so I'm wondering how effective, what have they actually done? I mean, what has actually been accomplished besides planning? I mean, have they actually implemented the plans that you've talked about?
Many of the districts have begun implementing the recommendations from our risk and vulnerability assessments.
How many
and our
school
plans.
districts do we have?
We have 21.
How many implemented the plan?
The vast majority of the districts implemented the emergency operations plans. About half of the districts so far have had risk and vulnerability assessments done through us that identify their risks and vulnerabilities as a district and provide suggestions on potential ways that those can be mitigated.
I mean, this obviously is a sensitive subject given the recent trends. I'm just wondering, I'm worried about duplication here.
If I can address that,
Please,
because
please.
the ISD does something different from what we do. The ISD looks at these types of issues from the school's perspective, how the school implements these on their side. But there's 2 sides to that very equation. There's how the school implements the plan, and there's how the public safety agencies that implement those plans then implement it on the public safety side. That's what we do. And planning for an event, pre-planning for a preparedness event falls to emergency management, and we are the emergency management agency for the entire county. So we work with all of our law enforcement agencies, all of our fire agencies, all of our first responder and public safety agencies to assist them with their side of the implementation of all these plans, policies, procedures, and things of that nature. We help with the coordination. We fill a role We fill a role that the ISD does not, because that's not where their expertise is. Those aren't the relationships they have, and that's not what their background is.
That's very good and necessary, absolutely. But don't you, do you coordinate with the school districts themselves? I mean,
yes.
Yet the law enforcement over here got their plan, schools got their plan, but guess what? Maybe the two plans aren't coordinated, so they're operating separately. So when there's an incident,
that's what we exist to do. We bridge that. We work with the ISD to bridge that gap so that there are not two different plans.
Is there one plan for the entire county? Every school district's got the same plan, operation, procedure?
Every school district does not have an identical plan.
Why not?
The vast majority work from a template that was created by my office, where 90 to 95% of that information is standardized.
How many years ago was that plan made?
2
years ago. So if there's
it's very current.
So if there's an incident in my local middle school, there's a shooter, what happens? Do they all got the same plan of action? Does someone in that school got the ability to call 911 from their workstation? Does the law enforcement have visual, real-time ID of the school district? It's not video, but video monitoring of the school where they know all the classrooms are, like our emergency management does for hazardous waste, right? Mapping of all the school districts, mapping of all the schools, so they know where the active shooter is. Do they have that type of plan so that if something happens?
Those issues are addressed. Those types of issues are addressed in the plans that were adopted by the district. Because of the sensitivity of the information in the plans, I'd prefer not to specifically address some of what the plans are.
Well, no. Transparency, the people need to know. Families need to know. They got to realize that there's an incident. We're getting off the subject of the budget, but the question becomes the effectiveness of what you're doing and coordinating with all the agencies. That's very key. But that's useless if it's not coordinated with every single school district in this county.
I'm saying that it is.
And if they're not, they need to be called out for why they're not coordinating with you, with the law enforcement.
We are coordinating with all of the districts in the county and the intermediate school district to make those plans standardized, to have those districts go through standardized training so they're using similar policies and procedures so that agencies understand those across jurisdictional lines.
I'd be interested to see the plan in more detail, but we'll do it separately. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the grant fund page, what is Operation Stone Garden?
Everybody loves Operation Stone Garden. It's a border security program. I don't know why they call it Operation Stone Garden. I've been asking for years. Nobody's given me a good answer. But what it does is it essentially reimburses the operational costs of law enforcement agencies that have jurisdiction over the United States-Canada border on the water for their activities in maintaining border security.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good question, Julie.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. You said this position you were looking for is about $115,000?
Correct.
Total cost?
Yes.
If I back that out of your personnel increase, it means that your personnel increase on the other part that's not that is over 11% between 22 to 23.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Is there a particular reason that it's so high?
I mean, getting into the minutia of the change in the personnel schedule in general, I know that I do have multiple positions that are in grades that are scheduled for larger increases than others. Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Brandon. I'm sorry for stepping in. Earlier today, we were talking about the need to increase salaries, Commissioner Zinner in particular, the need to increase salaries in the county, and that's certainly what we're doing right now. That 11% is right around where our average increase is countywide for our employees. Our sheriff's office they started last year with their current contract. but we are still looking at adding additional funds to that contract to continue to advance our salaries in this county. It's a long-term thing that we've had for a long time that we have not paid our people where I believe they need to be paid, and we continue to attack that. I am so heartened today to hear this board talk about the need to continue to advance those salaries for our employees who do the hard work on the ground every day of the week. So that 11% is right. Thank you, Commissioner Romano, for supporting me on that one. That 11% is right in line with what the average increase is for the 2023 budget. For the 2023 salary negotiations. That's probably a little bit of a secret. I hope media doesn't get onto that because it probably shouldn't be published in the Macomb Daily, but that's what it is, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. I was hoping it was something along that lines.
Yeah.
That we're just trying to retain employees. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Song?
Thank you, Chair. Going back to that grant position, safety in schools is a huge thing right now. And are you guys, and maybe you are already looking to see if there are other grants from
We are.
the state and federal government or the legislature that could, go towards this position, even if, right now it's being paid through the general fund dollars in the future. Maybe that's something to continue to actively seek out.
Yeah, we are looking at grant opportunities constantly to improve our school safety position. We've not found one yet other than the original funder who has told us no that would fund this position, but we have managed to become involved with other grants that are paying for other advances in school safety as well. For example, a really big one now is being able to map schools and integrate them with our dispatch systems. We're assisting all of the districts in pursuing that, finding a standardized vendor, going with somebody that all of our districts can use so that they have that standardized information when they're responding and it's in their CAD system. And that's going to cost somewhere on the magnitude of $2 to $3 million countywide for all of the schools to do that. So that's not necessarily this position, but that's a value add that we bring in being able to assist our districts and our law enforcement and our public safety in identifying those opportunities and putting forward our best proposal to get those.
The grant that has expired, is that a private public grant?
No, that was
What
from
is
the
that?
U.S. Department of Justice.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kraft, did you want to speak? And I saw your name there. No? Okay. Okay. No worries. I've got a couple questions, and I got some, and then we'll get to the second round here. So specifically, that grant is stopping. Obviously, it's ended. Any reasoning why they are stopping that grant?
When we applied for the grant, it had a 2-year term of performance.
Okay.
Because of COVID, and the fact that most of our schools had to either close down or lock down for significant periods of time, we were able to repurpose those employees to other emergency management activities and pay for their salaries through the CARES Act. And once the schools reopened, we were able to reassign them to their primary duties, begin charging the grant again, and going forward with that. So that's how we got 3.5 years out of a 2-year performance period grant that otherwise should have been done in May of 2021.
So that grant, though, initially, so we literally almost doubled our investment, right? So now we're looking at, after doubling the investment, initially the grant was only for 2 years. We've extended it. The dollars that we used and continued to use through that whole period of time, don't you think that everything that should have been done during that term would already be done now?
It's not. And it's because, as you all see on TV all the time, the threat landscape is changing consistently for school safety. Yes, I will say, when we wrote the grant, we had a specific idea of things that were going to be done with that grant funding. It has evolved dramatically from the time that we wrote that grant in 2018 to now at the end of 2022. You think about things like Oxford. You think about, other school incidents like that. Those are the kind of things that we need to stay at the forefront of. And through this program, we've built the expertise to be able to do that. And that's something that we, as an emergency management office and as a county statewide, that's something we have that others don't, that puts us in an advantageous position for working with our districts and our law enforcement agencies. I would argue that this became, over the course of the performance of this grant, a capability that we do not want to let go.
So if it is as important as you're saying that it is, why is the school district not implementing it in their budget?
Again, with the school district, if you have the school district each implement part of this, we're talking about one person that covers Macomb County. Spread that out across 21 school districts, they won't be able to recognize. But the
MISD has its own budget.
The MISD does have its own budget.
Okay,
yes.
so that's basically where this employee is coming from. So,
but no, the employee is not coming from the MISD.
Well, it's servicing.
It's not even. It's working in partnership with the MISD. But as I said to Commissioner Brown, we serve a different function in this process than the MISD does. There's a school side to planning for school safety incidents, and there's a law enforcement and first responder side to planning for school safety incidents. And the idea is to get them to meet in the middle and come up with those plans that are mutually agreeable to all parties involved. We represent, as the emergency management agency, the public safety side of this argument. So what would be more apt would be the idea that each police department, for example, we're going to hire somebody to do these planning activities on behalf of their police department, and each fire department we're going to do it, when we are the emergency management office for all of those communities, and this is what we do. So it's appropriately built into the emergency management process.
Okay. I'm still a little confused about it, I'll be honest. Looking at your budget page D7, your revenues go up drastically. Your expenditures go up drastically. Our fund balance is a negative 3.3 million. But forecasting forward, we don't have any more revenues in 2025 and no more expenditures. What's the
only because our grants are 3-year periods of performance. So those out years that we're talking about, we have no periods of performance available right now that extend into those calendar years. Okay. Typically what happens is because of the way the state hands those grants down from state government, we don't get those neatly tucked in with our budget cycle. So generally what tends to happen is every year I will come with the new grant amount and seek the board amending the budget to incorporate the new year grant on here.
So were we using COVID dollars back in 2020? Because our deficit on this fund has doubled in 2 years.
COVID dollars are not in this fund.
Okay. So.
And to be honest with you, I would have to look into what the issue with the fund balance, other than to say these are continuously ongoing grant programs that over several years overlap, and it's also a reimbursement-based program. So sometimes the reimbursements do lag behind the expenditures.
Well, it's been 2 years now, and I'm looking at a negative 3 million plus. That's going forward. So we're in second round. Commissioner Matuzak.
This is not necessarily a question for you. It's for our esteemed. So most of the department heads that have come before us are talking about personnel increases of 2 to 3%. Now I just heard 11%.
I'm not sure where your 2 or 3% is coming from.
Most people are talking about, that have come before us, have talked about raises in the.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing 2 or 3%. If you go department by department and you compare personnel increases 23 over 22, you're going to see more in the 8.9, 9, 10% range, if you do the math.
All right, that is not what I've been hearing, but.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Big difference in the budgets.
Thank you. It's great that you guys are doing what you're doing. I mean, it should be the county. It's a county responsibility. We look after all the county. we're the natural umbrella organization over many things. And school safety is a natural one, especially given all of our interactions with emergency management and so many other areas. That's a great, so is there a committee or a work group that you put in with the school districts and the ISD, and how big is that work group?
It's a great question. The ISD does have a school safety committee that emergency management and the school safety personnel from all of the 21 districts have been involved in, and that committee's been in operation for over 20 years now. And that committee with guidance from us on the public safety side and the ISD on the school side makes recommendations for school safety that are then implemented by the stakeholders.
So there's the coordination, but
correct.
You have a representative in that group, and you're getting ready to put together a grant request for standardized, I don't know if it's software, I don't know, whatever it'll be, for emergency management throughout all of our school districts in our county. One program that they can all access at the most reasonable cost. That's what you're working on.
That's one of the things that we are working on, yes.
Pretty significant thing, though. I mean, that's school safety.
We're also working to
upgrades, right?
Yep, we're also working to increase the number of school districts that have their cameras integrated into ComTech. As you know, that's been a big priority for us for the last few years. Yeah. We're up to about 10, and several have approached us with preliminary discussions about joining the program so that we can access those camera systems from ComTech as well. And another big coordination issue that we're working on is threat assessment, the process by which the schools actually identify threats that are taking place in their buildings and assess the level of the threat and what to do about it. And that's a coordinated process between the schools, emergency management, law enforcement, fire, and all the other stakeholders.
See, this is a good news story that many people don't know about. I mean, you think I would know. I think I try to be pretty much aware of what's going on around me. And I wasn't aware that you were doing it to that extent and with the ISD. I thought the ISD was handling that separately and independently. But we're right alongside.
The ISD does a great amount of work, but so do we.
Okay, great. Thank you. Keep up the good work. I'm glad, and I'll follow up offline about the rest of this.
Sounds good.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, seeing no other speakers on this item, we've got a motion on the floor. Please vote. Thank you, Brandon.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, next item is public participation. This is the opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any issue. Anyone from the public like to speak? Any issue?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm on the heels of Bobby Hill and a resident of Mount Clemens, New Haven, and Chesterfield. I'd like to know, is there a diversity blanket in place? And where I find that with Macomb County, I used to work for Macomb County for 27 years, and is there a blanket diversity paper in place for the county jail? In reference to the statement that was made by the police, he said that they needed to be in jail. I don't confer with that because some of our people need mental health. And as you all know, they closed down the mental health facilities. And by the grace of God, those jailers will be healed by the grace of God. And they don't belong in jail, but we need mental health. On the heels of Reverend Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and Action News Network, a lot of those people that were released from jail have been sent to North Carolina, South Carolina, and Atlanta for a better way of life. I've been before this board 28 years ago, approximately 10 times, and I used to be an employee of Macomb County of 20 years. I would like to know where we can get that blanket of diversity, and also if they could co-op with Wayne County. They do an excellent job with hiring practices, from the cadets to the sergeants. And one of the things we don't want is any more police brutality. And me being a female woman, a school teacher, and a PhD candidate, I have been subject to police brutality for no reason at all. And our network is doing something about it. We're moving people out of this county because of the things that has gone wrong in this county. I've lived here 60 years, and it doesn't reflect us at all. But we don't deserve to be abused and misused. And that's why we exited at least 20,000 jail inmates. The Reverend
30
Jesse
seconds.
Jackson. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds. I was just giving you a courteous reminder, courteous.
And in present, the commissioners of past have done a wonderful, wonderful job in securing what we needed as a diversity team. Thank you.
Would anyone from the public like to speak? Once, twice, we'll close public participation. Next is commissioner comments. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. For the rest of the board members, I have requested from our finance chair a listing of requested personnel changes by department. What did they request and what was granted? So we'll have a comparison of what they asked for versus what was in the budget. Also, as I sit through these budgets, every time I learn something new, that there's a group that goes out and solicited bids. I think it was under community services for services that don't have to come before the board because they're separate entities and they don't have to follow the $35,000 requirement. I'm asking, I don't know who gets this, Adriana, Steve. I would like a listing of how many of those exist, similar to what was just with community services.
How many entities or how many contracts?
No, not how many entities can do that. Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. We had a mistake in this budget with the number of positions in one column, and there's been a couple of those. And every year I swear I'm going to keep track of them. But, you know, if you didn't read in the paper, my dog ate my glasses, and I'm not seeing really well, waiting for my new ones to come in. These are CVS readers I'm using as regular glasses, so I'm having a time of it. But anyway, Steve, my question, what I'm curious as to whether or not when there's a mistake, and like the dollar amount's correct, but when we find in the budget, oh, that number's wrong, it should be this, should you bring all those forward in one thing that would be an amendment, or should we be making sure we correct them, or do you just correct them? How are you planning on handling those? I know we have a couple of these every year.
So my intention is to accumulate them, which Dave and I are keeping a running tally. Fortunately, there are not that many. And then we'll give you corrected pages, but I don't think there's anything to amend because the dollars are the dollars and that's what the board adopts. So it's just a matter of head count.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. And also, I think there's some typos that we find through the process that Steve is flagging for us as well, that we're also flagging. Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be giving a tribute this weekend to Pastor Ron Wagner of Macomb Baptist Church. He has been a pastor for 56 years. He teaches the Bible very well, and people like him. He's been a pastor a long time. His wife has been married to him for 56 years. They have 2 adult daughters. That with the wife and the 2 adult daughters have ministries. They reach out to every person that they come across, whether they're in the church or out of the church, and I think I'll enjoy giving the tribute to this man. Just want everybody to know. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers. Made by Romano, supported by Haw. Thank you, everybody. See y'all tomorrow.
Motion passes 12 to 0.